Resource Partnership. If you go to the south end of Lancaster Avenue in North Park, you will find yourself at the very southern tip of this large conglomeration of counties and various representatives. So I'm pleased that you're all here. Let me just say, before we even get to introductions, that we are busily counting to see if we have a quorum, and at the moment we do not, but we're willing to go around and count heads one more time, but we need to have the physical presence of people who are listed on our agenda as policy review panel members, either they or their alternates. So that being said, I'll just ask on my left-hand side if we could do introductions.
Good morning, everyone. Supervisor Judy Morris from Trinity County, District 2, Beaverville, the urban district.
I'm Marilyn Seward from Siskiyou County, from Scott Valley, which is the rural district.
Jerry Hemmingston, Delaware County Board of Supervisors.
Marsha Armstrong, Siskiyou County Board of Supervisors. Grace Bennett, Siskiyou County Board of Supervisors.
Ryan Simberg, Humboldt County Board of Supervisors.
Efren Carrillo, Sonoma County Board of Supervisors, also Director, Sonoma County Water Agency.
Chris Peters, Tribal Outreach Coordinator.
Wayne Hayden, California Geological Survey and Sonoma County TRPC member.
Mark Lovelace, Humboldt County Board of Supervisors.
Rick Atkinson, Siskiyou County Planning.
Sean Curtis, Monroe County Resource Analyst.
I'm Tim Anderson, staff, Sonoma County Water Agency.
Carol Reach, Humboldt Bay Municipal Water District, and TPRC member for Humboldt County.
Catherine Glenn, staff, Resource Partnership.
Mike Orcutt, Fisheries Department Director for the Hooper Valley Tribe. And as partially here for council member Julie Beth, who was hoping to be there. And there's, I think, a couple people already passed. The council will be taking up and you want to find them. Likely at some point that will come.
Thank you.
Paul Kelly, consultant for Property for Outreach.
Diana Jenkins, Kumar, Humboldt County staff, and regional administrator to the North Coast Resource Partnership.
Karen Gaffney, West Coast Watershed, and staff to the North Coast Resource Partnership.
And if people in the audience wouldn't mind introducing themselves, I'd be pleased for that to happen.
John Menke, Quartz Valley.
Jennifer Menke, Quartz Valley.
Leslie Loudon, State Water Resources Control Board.
Melissa Sparks, Department of Water Resources.
Craig Cross, DWR, IRWM.
Jeffrey Albrecht, State Water Board.
Eric Ekdahl, State Water Board.
Conrad Fisher from Stone Spire.
George Kowski, Hoopa Valley Tribe, Fisheries.
Natalie Reed, Siskiyou County Council's Office.
Margie Graham, Department of Water Resources.
I'm Brian Morris, Siskiyou County Council.
Tom Pease, Quartz Valley.
Pleased to have you all here today. A couple of notes just for everybody's edification. We have had a Jimmy Smith sighting. Strangely enough, in Washington, D.C. by the vice chair. I know there have been sightings in Humboldt County, Ryan, but the one that caught my attention was the fact that Jimmy and Jackie Smith, alive, very well, back in the East Coast, and visiting Congressman Jared Huffman's office, who was having lunch with my vice chair. Judy, would you like to give a quick report?
Well, I was back east last week upon Congressman Huffman's request for some forestry issues, and we were done with that testimony and decided to have a brown bag lunch in his office, and lo and behold, there walks Jimmy Smith. So,
for those of you who didn't know Jimmy Smith, he was our founding chair and past chair, and seems to be recovering from.
They looked great.
So we're pleased to be able to give you that report. Is that an accurate reflection, Ryan, of what you're seeing in his home turf?
Yep.
Good. Thank you very much for that. A number of us were able to come up yesterday afternoon, and thanks to the hospitality of Grace and the, I guess, staff, citizens of Wairika, we had a marvelous tour of downtown old historic Wairika, and I got to satisfy my curiosity about the tunnels that run underneath old town Wairika. Part of its rich history, and rich being used advisedly as a gold rush town back in the 1850s, 60s, and 70s. So we had a grand time, and we also found out that the Bennett family has been active in Major League Baseball. And in fact, if you go to the Rex Club right on Old 99, you'll find pictures of the Bennett males in their baseball glory. So thank you, Grace, very much, and thank you, Marcia, also for being along as a co-host. We had a great time, and then we adjourned to Puerto Vallarta, and so it was a great day yesterday. We're here today with business to do. I would just say that we do not have a quorum. Is that correct? I would ask, as the chair of the North Coast Airwimp, that we regard ourselves as a committee of the whole. We will not be able to take action on any of the items that are noted as decisions on the agenda. We will be able to discuss, and we'll be able to give direction where appropriate to ad hoc committees. And so I am planning to conduct the meeting under that rule, unless there are any objections. If there are no objections from the policy review panel members present, then let's proceed. Martin?
Do we anticipate anyone else perhaps getting here later? And could we adjust the agenda to move business items, action items further back?
There's one question.
I'm still waiting on my colleague. I have not heard from her.
We know that other members are not going to be here. The remaining question mark is representative from Trinity County, and we have not been able to confirm or deny her attendance.
How many are we short?
One. Right. And we have examined our list thoroughly, believe me, and we fortunately have nothing on the agenda that is, completely time specific. We, I think, can delay formal action on items until our meeting in Weaverville. Is that correct? Okay. So that being the case, Mark, I hear what you're saying, and I've been anxious also to get confirmation one way or the other. If in fact this does happen, we, I believe, could go back and take some action, if the panel agreed, but at the moment it seems unlikely. We also have a new TPRC member with us today from Modoc County, Sean Curtis, and welcome. Anything you'd like to say?
Glad to be here.
Thank you. That's a very adequate response, and we appreciate it. Let's see, we have heard introductions from the State Water Board staff who are here as we went around. Sorry.
Jake, do we have another new TPRC member, Carol, at the end of the table?
Are you new?
Yes,
Well, sorry about
that's
that.
okay.
Can you please introduce yourself?
A new member from Humboldt County. I'm the manager of the Humboldt-Bakersville Water District, and very pleased to be here. Thank you.
When I saw you come in, I thought I know this person. But
Well, I did attend Ukiah, but I
Oh,
wasn't
okay.
yet on this, so I
okay.
confused you.
That's why you weren't on my new member radar screen. Thank you, Wayne, for doing that. And we also have the DWR staff, and we'll be hearing from both the state water boards and DWR as we go through our agenda. We do have an agenda, and any changes suggested by anybody, otherwise I just ask for consensus that we use this agenda as written. Is that agreeable to all?
Good.
Okay, thank you for that. Public comments for items not on the agenda. Those of you who are attending as members of the public, there are copies of the agenda available on the table. If you've had a chance to review them, I will be asking for public comment as we go through individual items, but there may be something that you would wish to address this panel on, and this would be the time to let me know that you would like to do that. Otherwise, there will be an opportunity as we go through the agenda. I'm seeing no one rise, and so,
I got a question.
yes.
I'm not sure if I'm the public or what role or status I have today, but this board, this is my first meeting there, I've had staff at a couple of the earlier ones, but with this board, do they get into things like policy type questions or water needs or anything like that? If not, I'll just, and for informational purposes and or other purposes.
I can't speak to exactly what, for example, the water board, state water board, or DWR will address. It's very possible that questions of that nature could arise from their presentation, just for starters.
Well, maybe I'll.
You may hear
We're not
something.
in jeopardy here, but anyway, more of a different than my question. Does this group like write letters on different issues or something?
Yes,
I apologize if that's.
No. The panel has frequently authorized the chair to sign off on letters to various bodies. Sometimes because of timing issues, the executive committee authorizes the chair to do that. So that's a fair question. We do.
Okay. Well, as time allows, I have something to bring up at some point.
Fine,
But
and we'll recognize you. Thank you. That being said, we will move to agenda item number 4, and I'm pleased to note that it's 10:16. And the State Water Resource Control Board representative has stated, as Jeff Albrecht, but I understand that another person is going to make the presentation. If you could introduce yourself,
I
please.
sure will. Come up to the table here. I'm Leslie Loudon, and I'm the manager of the bond section in the Division of Financial Assistance at the State Water Board. And my staff and I manage basically all of our grant programs, except our wastewater grant program, which is in the other group that is partnered with the Clean Water State Revolving Fund program. But I'll touch on all of our financial assistance programs as I go through. And I just wanted to basically give you a real brief update on what the State Water Board is doing as far as our priorities, and then how our funding programs fit into those priorities to support our stakeholders in complying with our policies. We have funded a number of projects in the North Coast. We've just done so many successful projects up here. We've had a great partnership throughout the region with a number of the projects that we've funded. My staff and I just spent the last 2 days touring projects, the Prop 50 projects, the IRWM projects, and it was just fantastic to see them. I want to thank the people who hosted us and showed us around. We went to Weaverville and Etna, and then the Shasta Valley RCD gave us a tour yesterday, and it was just great to see those projects. Your IRWM, when we started this program, it was a new program. It was quite a challenge to start. And, we've had lots of little bumps and hurdles along the way, but we've just developed such a great working relationship and a partnership. I wanted to acknowledge the staff of your group. They've just been fantastic, Jen and Devin, and you're just really lucky to have them. I have to tell you that.
We appreciate that. Thank you for those remarks.
We work with IRWMs all over the state, and they're all unique. But I just did want to mention to you that your group is really held up as a model in some areas as far as your stakeholder involvement and outreach, the work that you do with disadvantaged communities and with the tribes. So we've been getting comments to that manner from different social environmental justice groups in looking at modeling things after the North Coast. So you've got a really good reputation along the state. And I know it's been difficult, but with such a large region, a lot of the other RWMs are quite a bit smaller. But I just wanted to acknowledge that great work that you're doing, and it's really appreciated because the VACs are one of our priorities as well. And we're winding down with your grant, with our Prop 50 program, and so we're just, I think, doing the contract, amending the contract to extend it. But we've had so many great projects that have finished, and I wanted to acknowledge those people because it was really difficult. In 2008, we had the bond freeze right as things were getting going. It was just devastating to so many of the agencies. It was a really difficult time, and trying to get things restarted was very tough. But even outside the IRWM, we've done a number of projects that I just wanted to go through real quickly and highlight for you, and then talk about what our future opportunities are. Our primary funding program is our Clean Water State Revolving Fund program. And we loan, it's a loan program, and we do about $300 to $500 million a year. And since 2000, we've done 19 projects on the North Coast for $63 million. And those are primarily wastewater upgrade, wastewater type plants, although we do fund point source and stormwater projects. Over $25 million of that has been through what we call principal forgiveness, which is essentially a grant. Once you complete your project, we forgive the loan amount. And so we set that aside for disadvantaged and small communities. So you've gotten quite a bit of that funding in your community. We did a really unique project a few years ago with the Yurok tribe. It's the only one that's been done in the nation. It was a property acquisition where we loaned the Yurok tribe the money to acquire the property, and then they're doing sustainable forestry practices on it. So we worked with for about 2 years on this project, but it's just a fantastic project, and it's being highlighted around the nation for creative uses of the funding source. So that was really a great project. The State Water Board has some Prop 84 stormwater funding, and we just completed our first round. We're going to do 2 rounds of that funding. And 3 projects in the North Coast were awarded funding. We have a project in Fort Bragg, one in Arcata, and the Redwood Community Action Agency got a planning grant. So even though you're not big urban areas, you're still successful in getting those grants. So that was great. We also have several coastal funding programs. We have our Clean Beaches Initiative funding program and our Areas of Special Biological Significance. And we've done 5 projects on the North Coast for about $9 million. So you can see in all of these different funding programs, we've done quite a bit of work on the North Coast. One of the programs that you are really successful in is our federal 319H non-point source implementation program. And just over it's an annual funding cycle that we do, and just over the last 4 cycles, we have 13 projects in the North Coast, which is far more than the rest of the state. And then one other funding program is our Cleanup and Abatement Account program, which the North Coast Board is actually getting our board will consider on May 7th, giving the North Coast Regional Water Board $475,000 to do a project on the Elk River sediment project there. So that's just another unique funding source that you guys have been able to access through us. So those are kind of projects that are ongoing in the past, and I just wanted to shift a little bit to what's going on in the future. I want to talk about what are the State Water Board's priorities and policies that we're working on, and then shift into where we have future funding opportunities for that. So the board actually identified a number of priority actions to work on as far as policy, and in 2012 actually realigned the staff resources within the board to focus on those priority actions, and I'll just mention them really quickly because quite a few of them don't impact you guys that much. But the top priority is the Bay Delta adaptive management, looking at flow and water quality objective updates in the Bay Delta system. In stream flow recommendations for high priority rivers and streams within the Delta is the second priority. We're working on a statewide water quality control plan for trash. And again, that's more of a focus on some of the Southern California areas that have TMDLs for trash, but we're doing a statewide policy for that. We're working on sediment quality objectives for enclosed bays and estuaries. Working on a desalinization policy. And then another big project is doing a groundwater strategic plan. And that is coming out of some work that actually Eric Ekdahl has been involved in over the last few years in our groundwater ambient monitoring program. Did a large study of the state to identify communities that rely on contaminated water for drinking water sources. And we also did another project looking at nitrate contamination. And again, the North Coast actually came out really well in those studies. There were very few communities in the North Coast. I think Eric mentioned just 2 or 3 that actually have wells, the drinking water wells that are contaminated from looking at the data. So most of those problems, again, are not in the North Coast area. They're in the Central Valley and the Central Coast area. But the board is really concerned with that and is working on that. And associated with the groundwater strategic plan is looking at an environmental justice community support for those communities that are relying on contaminated drinking water sources and the nitrate. So those two things are closely related and are going to be, there's been quite a bit of focus in the legislature on those things. And the board is working with the Department of Public Health with those to come up with the actions that we need to take to address those problems. In addition to that, we're working on a draft wetland policy that will be coming before the board probably within the next year or so. They just posted information on our website. We're just starting the CEQA process on that, so there's information available on that. And also working on in-stream flow for coastal streams, because that was set aside by the courts due to the CEQA challenge, and so they reposted a CEQA document for that just recently. I think the comments just closed in April for that to revise that. We also have a number of policies and permits that the board has just adopted. In June of 2012, they adopted the policy for siting, design, operation, and maintenance for on-site wastewater treatment systems or septic systems. And so we're looking at how we can implement that and how we can fund through our Clean Water SRF those types of projects. In January of 2013, they amended the recycled water policy and looking at contaminants of emerging concern in recycled water and also adjusting some of the monitoring requirements for that permit. And then just recently, February 2013, the board adopted the new stormwater phase 2 permit for small MS4s, and that'll become effective July 1st. So a priority of the board is how we implement those programs, and that will tie in directly with how we do our funding in the next round of Prop 84 stormwater. And I just wanted to mention that all of this, there's maybe a resource that people aren't aware of. You probably don't follow our board maybe as closely, but every month we do an executive director's report, which is on the website, and it's a great resource to find out what's going on with the board. It'll just be short staff blurbs about different things the staff are working on, but then as an appendix to it, there's an update of all the policies and what's happening with them and what the plan and schedule is, all color-coded for which ones are active and things like that. So it's kind of a nice, handy little thing to see what's happening. With that, I want to just talk about what we are doing from a funding perspective to support these priorities of the board. As I mentioned, our state revolving fund is our largest, by far our largest and primary funding source, and most of it has gone to wastewater treatment plant upgrades. But we do a number of stormwater projects and also non-point source projects, like I mentioned with the York Tribe. It's a 20 to 30 year repayment process. The interest rate is typically 1/2 the general obligation bond rate, so it's usually between 2 and 3%. although we have the ability to lower that interest rate to even down to 0% in some cases for disadvantaged communities. And we can also extend the repayment term up to 30 years for disadvantaged communities to make it affordable for them in some cases. In 2008, the board focused on developing a small community wastewater strategy to look at what we could do to help these communities in complying with their permit requirements. And I just wanted to highlight a couple of the accomplishments from that strategy. We're really trying to leverage other funding sources as well to put together packages of funding in order to help these communities make these projects affordable. And to that extent, every year the California Financing Coordinating Committee holds funding fairs. I don't know if any of you are familiar with that, but the 2013 schedule is out. Jeff actually has some flyers for it, so if maybe you want, he can give you a flyer. The one on the north coast is in Ukiah, August 22nd. And also there'll be one October 15th in Sacramento that will be webcast. But the great thing about the in-person ones is that you can actually meet with the staff. All the funding agencies are there, you know, the drinking water, wastewater, water quality, water supply, conservation, GWR is there, the federal agencies are all there. They give initial presentations on their funding sources, and in the afternoon you can meet individually with the various staff to talk about their specific projects. So it's a really great opportunity if you're looking for potential ways of having a specific project to talk about. Another thing that came out of that strategy was in 2008, the board sponsored legislation to create the Small Community Grant Fund. And what that allows us to do is assess an annual charge on our loans in lieu of interest, and then we use that money to provide grants to small and disadvantaged communities. And it's kind of ramping up. The program only goes right now, it's only authorized through 2014. But we had $2 million authorized initially. We have $12 million in this current fiscal year, and we anticipate having about $30 million by 2014. And that's a continuous application and disbursement type process as projects come in. Now the great thing about that program is that we can actually fund planning through that program, because it's very difficult for communities to take out a loan because they don't have a repayment source to fund planning. So that has been just a great help. Each year the board kind of does a work plan for how we're going to allocate those funds. It's in our intended use plan, and that has the specifics about who qualifies for what as far as, you know, if you're severely disadvantaged or, you know, the size of the community and things like that. We also contracted with the California Rural Water Association to provide technical assistance to disadvantaged communities, and some of that is even compliance assistance, looking at audits of the plant, troubleshooting the plant for if communities having permit violations. So that's been a great resource also. They're planning technical assistance for these communities, outreach, and assistance with rate setting for 218 issues. And then they're also able to help the communities with their financial assistance applications, because that can be a difficult process also. We also updated our regulations for the operator certification program to provide a provisional operator and contract operator registration to help some of these communities that are having a difficult time either finding and keeping operators with their systems. And then another big thing that we're doing, and this is the board will consider on May 7th, amending our Clean Water State Revolving Fund policy, and it's going to streamline the application. The application has been a big hurdle for a lot of people. It's a difficult process. So we've had a work group and the task force and advisory committee of the SRF advising us on ways to streamline the process. And we will have training videos online also to help applicants with that. So I think that that's going to be a big help. It's also communities can go through the credit review process once and then essentially be almost like a line of credit type thing and approved for multiple projects instead of having to go through it multiple times. We're also exploring incentives to larger communities to assist with smaller disadvantaged communities and seeing if we can give financial incentives to the larger groups to provide technical assistance to the smaller. So there's work going on along that line. And then they're also working on streamlining a general permit for some of the smaller wastewater treatment plants in the general order. And so the board will be considering that. I believe it's scheduled to come to the board this summer. So that should help also with the permitting.
To get underway, this meeting is hereby reassembled, and we're a little bit in advance, and thank you for your cooperation in that. As you know, we have been working to get a tribal coordinator on board. And you know, and we're very pleased to announce that he is physically with us today and has been working with us. Chris Peters from Red Deer Consulting. We went through a process. We had an ad hoc committee of tribal members, right? And so he has the unofficial title of liaison, but he was part of this group. As I said earlier on, we believe that ad hoc committee has now fulfilled its task, its work, and so it's hereby disbanded with thanks for all the hard work. And this is a chance for Chris Peters to talk to us about the work that he's already embarked upon and some of his plans for the future. Chris?
Were you going to say something, Bruce Karen?
If I can just outline the exact process that we went through.
All right, if you want to be more precise, I was being
No.
very general. On you go.
Oh, either way.
No.
But we, as Jake said, we had the tribal ad hoc committee, which was comprised of tribal PRP and TPRC members and Supervisor Sundberg. And we went through an RFP process, advertised very, very widely, received quite a few proposals, and narrowed that down to 5 that were interviewed, and then from those, the tribal PRP and TPRC members selected Red Deer Consulting, which Chris is the principal of. And as we move forward, we've been working with the tribal PRP and TPRC members and Red Deer Consulting to finalize the scope of work, which tiers off of the DWR work plan and scope of work. And so that process has been finalized. There's now a contract in place through West Coast Watershed, which was at the request of the tribal PRP and TPRC that we be the contract administrator. So we're contracting with Red Deer Consulting to play this role, and we'll have regular meetings with the tribal PRP and TPRC members to guide Chris's work.
Well, thank you. Well, first of all, I'd like to recognize Conrad and his work to bring the initial proposal forward and to launch the tribal coordinator position, and certainly thank West Coast Watershed for their good work in getting us to this point. I was brought on a few months ago and basically dropped in the middle of the stream and was expected to swim almost immediately. And with Karen and Catherine and Judy and the committee, we're kind of in the middle of things and running pretty fast. But I appreciate that, and glad to be a part of this operation. Within the region, there are at least 34 tribal organizations, each of them an independent sovereign nation that has specific jurisdiction and specific responsibility to provide to their membership. And this body, by accepting tribal people's participation, is an anomaly with state organizations. So certainly appreciate that. An opportunity to come to the table with the honored Board of Supervisors members from the region. I think it provides a good opportunity for ongoing networking and dialogue, and I see that key to our the survival of water in Northern California. As I've always said, when Southern California needs water, we need to buckle down pretty hard and to take some firm positions, because with water crises becoming more urgency, that's not too far in our distant future. So it's good that we come to the table and begin to have conversations about these important issues. The task outlined for the coordinator position is, first of all, reestablish a mailing list, a listserv of participating tribal governments. And we're into that process now. We've received mailing lists from several different sources and have reached out to other agencies and organizations to receive their addresses as well. Things changed, as with in county government. What was there yesterday is not generally there today. So with tribal government, it's the same. Things change and elections happen, so we need to keep on that process on an ongoing basis. And we're moving that forward. The first major task in front of us is to reconstitute the tribal representatives that's at the table. Our interest and our goal is to bring forth 3 representatives that are more policy level people and not to discourage program participation, but certainly those tribal council members, those tribal chair people that are out there, to bring them to the table to participate at this level, this high level of conversation with other boards of supervisors. And as a policy council, and we need to step forward with our best policy thinking and people to do that. So that's one of our definite goals here for the very near future. And reconstituting the technical committee as well. And there's high-level expertise for Native communities throughout the district that have been working with fisheries, with water systems for length of time. We need to bring those people forward to participate as well. So that's our principal goals. We've been involved quite a bit since we signed on. So looking at the regional forum issues that was raised here today, and having some conversation about how that strategic water plan is developed within the state of California. And part of that is the tribal water summit next week in Sacramento. Another issue that looks at the strategic water plan on a broader statewide basis. We want to make sure that Northern California ideas and concepts are brought forward, because our ideas are very different than Southern California tribal groups as well. So that's a big issue that we will be a part of. And with the Water Summit, they're looking more from a traditional native knowledge perspective and trying to incorporate those concepts within the state water plan, rather than just the technical aspects of how water flows, but what is the spiritual aspects of water? What is the cultural significance of water? What is the broader homeland? And how do tribal groups use and manage water systems, throughout their traditional homelands, and bringing those forward as issues to consider in the statewide strategic plan as well. So definitely look forward to being a part of this organization and contributing whatever we can. And I'll look forward to the opportunity to work with tribes and identify projects, help organize them, constitute them, and move through the process. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Chris. This will be a chance for those of us around the table to ask any questions of Chris, any thoughts that you have at this time. Please, Chris.
You said homelands. What is your definition of a homeland?
Well, I think those definitions will be decided by the tribes that have occupied areas historically. And we know that reservation systems and rancheria systems were constituted as concentration camps. And they have a broader interest culturally, socially, in areas outside of their small areas that they've been placed on, and have a connection, a cultural connection, and venture to say a spiritual connection to those outside areas. And that relationship to land and relationship to water define who they are as peoples. And to sever that relationship begins to limit tribal people's understanding of who they are as peoples.
Sorry, Judy?
I just want to say something. Welcome, and it's been a pleasure working with you on the phone on the ad hoc committee, and thank you for your input.
Ryan?
I know that in Humboldt County, the tribes there they have a mapped out boundary of their ancestral territory, and then say for instance someone wants a building permit that's in one of those territories. If someone wants a building permit that's in one of those, they get sent to a clearinghouse that makes sure there's no burial ground or things like that that are there, and so they consult the tribe first before they go into a sensitive area, because they don't publish the sensitive areas, they just tell you where the boundaries are. So I'm not sure about the other jurisdictions, but most of them have a map of what that area looks like.
Thank you. Any thoughts from members of the public at this time? I'm not seeing anybody stand. Chris, I look forward to working with you. I look forward to your efforts on making sure that the tribes are well represented both at the policy and the technical level, and to continue the work that you have laid out that will be most valuable to us, and look forward to having you at our meetings and talking to you. Thank you. We also have a report that we are going to receive. It's called a debrief of the PPRC project review process, and Wayne Hayden, who chairs that, co-chairs that group, is going to give that. His co-chair has given birth, as we understand, to a wee baby boy, and maybe that's superfluous, a wee boy. And so Sandra is not with us today, but we hope that we will be seeing her back in action. But in the meantime, Wayne, if you could give us the process report.
Thank you, Chairman. Well, good afternoon, everybody. So following the PRPC's review, project review work, where we chose the preferred projects, we seemed like the obvious next step was to critique our own process as we did the first time, and see if there were, decide what went well, if there was any things we needed to improve upon. So we held a debrief meeting via conference call on March 1st. 11 of our members, the TPRC members, were there. 3 staff attended. And so, our intent was really to sort ourselves, I guess, pat us on the back a little bit of what a good job we did, because we thought we did. And then also point out things that we think could be improved. You can always improve a process. And so these suggestions for process refinement, based on what we had in the meeting, and there were some follow-up meetings and discussions, and I think some of them we've seen in what Judy was talking about, and I'll get to that a little bit later, that have already filtered into the plan, essentially. So that's good. And then, as the last thing, staff will conduct in-depth project interviews in the spring and summer of this year. And I think some of that's already begun. Yeah.
I've been, not formal ones, but
Yeah.
yes.
Okay. Could I have the next slide, please? My intent here today is to provide you kind of a quick snapshot of what we came to. The full text that the staff has prepared is on starts on page 22 of our packet here for this agenda, and that outlines more completely all the things that we said. And so, what went well, and I have to say, one of the very first thing that comes to my mind in terms of what went well, and many other with PRPC, was that what a great job staff did in assembling this huge amount of information, 42 projects. I mean, It took over 1,000 pages of text from these projects, and all extremely well organized, so it made it easy for us to go from one project to the next project to the next project, because they were provided to us in a similar format. And I can't thank staff enough for having done that for us. Thank you. So I think one of the first things we figured out was the project review and selection guidelines, which we had come to with an ad hoc committee and based on recommendations from the property court first round, worked pretty well. For the most part, worked really pretty well. And the other thing that I thought was really important was, if you look at the TPRC members, they cover a broad spectrum, broad geographic range from all over our district, but they also have a real broad range of technical abilities, technical knowledge, which I felt was critical for us to review this really wide range of projects. We had somebody, there were people who could specialize on parts of it and provide the guidance necessary for that. And I think that was critical for us to be able to review adequately and to effectively and efficiently review all of these projects, and that worked out really good. We all agreed at the end of the meeting with an open, honest, and inclusionary process. Everybody felt like they got heard. When we walked away, everybody felt like we'd done a good job. That the projects we picked, these were really good projects, and it was very, very hard, I'll have to say, because there were 42 projects and a lot of them were really, really good. And we knew right from the beginning we would not be able to fund all the projects, or probably very few of them, would get funded completely. And that was a real hard thing for us to have to swallow. For the meetings, amiable, differences of opinions, and of course you always get that with a group of people, but a nice back and forth. So again, it provided a real good review of all the different projects. Can I have the next slide, please? So, that's all what we think went well, but you can always come up with some suggestions for things that might be improved. And we thought about, we want to include mechanisms, to ensure professional demeanor and clarify a recusal process. And I see these as kind of getting at, well, you need to follow the process you have and work on it. Make sure you're following, Brown Act and those type of things. It's a public meeting, much, like this. So it's sort of like keeping mindful that we need to do this correctly in an upright, and professional, transparent way. But there were a few things we'd like to change. We thought that a pre-review meeting would have been helpful. We got the TPR staff and got them together, either via physically get together or a conference call, and really discuss amongst ourselves how we interpreted the way we were going to review the projects, and particularly how to score them. Everything was scored on a basis of 0 to 5, 0 being didn't meet our criteria, 5 being very, very, very well met our criteria. But we found that 0 to 5, while that sounds pretty good, different people had different interpretations of what 0 to 5 meant. And it didn't turn out to be that much different, but we felt we could have benefited from getting together and discuss that a little bit so that it was all very, very clear. It turned out in the meeting, any differences that we had got ironed out during the meeting. So, but we could have saved a little time if we'd done a bit more of that up front. We thought in the applications we could have had a bit more information about the potential funding sources and eligibility and the types of permit that would be required. And while we kind of had that in the application, it felt like that needed to be fleshed out a little bit more. Eligibility, and we had a number of us had questions on if the entity that had submitted the application were really even eligible to submit the application. It wasn't clear right from the beginning. So but staff looked at that. We got the answers that we needed. But I think one of the largest things was the budgets. We think we would have liked to have a little more information on the budgets, a little more detail in the budgets. People tried to outline what work had been done already, what needed to still be done, and what had been paid for, what hadn't been in it. But they didn't all present the information in the same exact fashion. I think it would have been better if we had a little more clarity there so that we immediately could tell, well, they're not asking for money to do this. They're just telling us they already did it. It wasn't always abundantly clear with the way that they filled out the application forms. The better metrics for evaluating project costs and benefits, and that kind of came to, we had projects where they intend to build something. And it's fairly easy to see, well, if you're going to build something, it got built as per the plans and specifications, and that's pretty easy to justify. But other projects, and part of these projects had parts with education and outreach. So the question is, well, how do you compare the cost to the benefits of those two completely different things? How do you judge the effectiveness of the outreach and education program? Is the number of pamphlets made? How effective was the outreach? It's hard to compare those together with someone who built something. So we need to work on a way to judge those better. And this last one, required project components to demonstrate they have a granted permission. And I think we touched on this with with Judy's discussion here at the bottom of page 3, that item EI.IA, where we were kind of concerned that people were proposing projects much of the time on private land, and yet there was no way to tell if they had permission to even work on that land, or if they had the clearance. And so we have the question as well, what if you don't get the permission to get it? I mean, so what happens? The partner issue, many of the project components provided rather extensive lists of partners. And kind of a sad note, one of the partners listed by one project applicant passed away about 10 years ago. So, but he's still being listed as a partner on projects. And so, clearly that needed to be updated. And I think what you discussed about having more documentation of who these partners were and what their role would be in the project. It's easy just to list a bunch of names of people, but I think I like the idea. And we saw some of this where there were letters of support and things like that to really show how they intend to be involved, as opposed to simply a list of agency partners and private company partners and such, landowners, that type of thing. So we thought, well, that could need to be fleshed out, so we had a more confident that they could actually do the project they were proposing, where they intended to do it. Okay, so, but we also felt that perhaps for the next round, and this kind of head up, that we probably could use a little bit of direction from the PRP as we go into round 3 about what they want to see funded, what they want us to be looking for. And these are some of the questions that came up. And if you look at the complete written text, there were a lot more. But I mean, some of these are, rebate, training, outreach, and education, and demonstration projects. Is this something that we want to fund? The demonstration projects, while they were good little projects, but they were actually, in many cases, they're demonstration projects. They're really too small to make a great deal of difference, but it's to show people how to do something. Is that something we want to fund, spend money on? Rebate programs, where you're providing money in the hopes that you will encourage someone to possibly maybe do something. But without actual building anything. You're providing an opportunity, and it just seemed to me that I wasn't sure if that would be and training, outreach, and education. That was an element of a lot of these, and it's important, obviously, but what does the mix need to be? How much training, education, outreach is a good mix on what was, in this case, this round, implementation projects. They were supposed to be, we felt they were supposed to be building something, and then the emphasis on a multitask, integrated project where they had several things, maybe some road upgrades, stream restoration, water tanks, a number of things all pulled together, or as opposed to projects that had one single task. We're just going to put in a water tank or something like that. We kind of wondered what was what did the PRP, which would they prefer to have? And then the PRP priorities on the different entities and project types, the DACs, and are we looking for a particular type of project, water conservation, increased water supply, that type of thing. And then, we felt we needed to clarify the public and project input process during the review process. And we had set up, in our guidelines, we had set up a way to do this. where we have the public and the project proponents could provide us with additional information if they felt it was necessary. And I think we'd like to, based on that experience, revisit that perhaps and see if perhaps there was a different way we could have done this. And in the packet, there's lots of different TPRC members' ideas about how that might be done. You know, do we allow everyone to speak? Do we require all the project components to be there, or at least somebody, you know, like at least be somebody there from the project has to be there? And we had a lot of discussion on that. How workable is that? You know, how hard it is to get people to come in from such a large geographic area. But there's a lot of money at stake, you know, hundreds of thousands of dollars in many cases, and that seems pretty important. And, you know, you think somebody could spend a day. But I think, you know, we'd like to talk about this and get more of this kind of things worked out prior to the next round of funding and get through the process. So, that's pretty much all I wanted to say there. Like I said, the full text is provided, starting on page 22, so you can read through it. Does anyone have any questions?
Do you allow advocates to attend by phone?
Yes, we had a conference call line set up, and as in fact some of the TRC members, that's how they participated during the review process, was through the phone call. And other people, anybody, we made it public knowledge, anybody could call in and listen to the whole thing, and a number of people did. Unfortunately, the phone we used wasn't of the highest quality, or the room acoustics weren't the best. Anyway, it was marginally effective, and we think that can be improved.
Perhaps a webinar format or something.
Exactly, right.
Also, do you encourage phased projects chronologically, where we do step one, and we may fund step one at this period of time, and next time submit to step two?
Well, I think that's, again, one of the things we'd like to get some input from the PRP on that. I like that idea. I like phased projects myself. And there were a number of projects that were written up that way, and some didn't really.
Well, it seems like if you're lobbing off money, that's a good way to go.
That was the approach I was taking.
Yes, right, exactly. And in the review, people who had separate tasks and parts of tasks, and we took a hard look at that to perhaps we didn't have to fund all the tasks, or part of a task, you know, because we had such a limited sum of money to give out. We were very concerned that, well, we want to spread out the money as much as we can, and we have to give them enough money to actually be able to do something workable. There's no point giving them so little money they can't really use it. So, and I think, you know, that made it really difficult to decide on that type of thing. But it was critical, because if it was just one lump sum, then it's either a do or die kind of thing, we felt.
And you'd rather have them segment it than you.
Well, exactly, because the information we're provided is only of a certain level of detail, and it makes it difficult for us to decide exactly where you can cut that off. You know? So, are there any further questions?
Anything from members of the public? I think you have asked for direction, and so since we're meeting as this committee of the whole, but in this instance, since I'm the chair and I appoint the ad hoc committee, we would hope that, expect that the ad hoc committee would proceed or continue and make formal recommendations to the PRP at a meeting in the future. How soon in the future do you think?
Ask Catherine that question.
I think once we begin to better understand what the next round of funding will look like and what those requirements will be, then I think we'll begin to gather that information
And the information from the project proponents too. We don't really have
before you meet again in a decision, you know, in a recommendation setting format, you need to, the ad hoc committee needs to forward to us for formal adoption what you would suggest that we would do to make the process better.
Okay.
And we could agendize for the next meeting the conversation that I think Wayne is asking for around more of the nuance on some of these questions, and I think we could bring examples of what you're talking about.
Right.
But we need to have a very focused conversation. We clearly can say, seems good, let's keep moving in this direction, but we can't give you a finite answer. That's my understanding. So we'll leave it at that. Does anybody on the PRP have anything to add? Otherwise, thank you for the report. Thank you for your hard work, and we'll look forward to having your co-chair joining you as well. Next time. You probably are looking forward to it. Anyway, thanks for all the work.
To have at least a handful of projects be prioritized and provided enough technical assistance to where they can have a competitive grant proposal for future rounds of IRWP funding or other funding. Some of the opportunities that Leslie mentioned earlier today, just setting people up, making connections. This program's doing a lot of things, including working within existing associations of water and wastewater providers, or in some cases trying to form water and wastewater associations for folks to share equipment, share information on, I have leaks in my system too, and this is how we address it. Oh, that's a great idea. We haven't done that. Or, even considering a circuit rider operator position, just folks being able to get together around the table, networking as people that work in the same field to share information. So that's one level, and then the technical assistance and the outreach is all a part of that. Also, this project will feed into the next iteration of the plan, and probably in future rounds of funding as we identify more specifically what some of the needs of providers in the region are. So one of the things we've been working on since our last meeting is trying to do a comprehensive survey of all the water and wastewater providers, everyone who is regulated by the Department of Public Health in the region. This includes trailer parks, RVs, hotels, restaurants, as well as what you may typically think of tribal communities, community service districts, everything. So there's about 438 that we've identified from combining lists. If you were to look at kind of what if we had a target, our target would probably be more that serve communities, but wanting to reach everyone that we can. Of the serving kind of a larger community, there's probably close to 200 providers. So we've had this number, actually the 102 completed surveys is probably about a 115 as of today. Surveys continue to trickle in. We've provided the survey through as we've had meetings and trainings. We've provided hard copies of the survey. We've emailed out links to a Survey Monkey to do the survey online. And then lastly, we've been working with, we've actually hired on a consultant to help us, contracted with someone to help us make 438, at least 438 phone calls to all of the providers. And so everyone has been called at least once. In many cases, folks have been called multiple times. We've mailed out hard copies of the survey in cases that people said, oh, I'll totally fill that out. Mail it to me. And so we've gotten a little more than 100 back, and we're starting to crunch that data now. And as you can see, by county, these are the responses to date. I have this spreadsheet with who's responded to the survey. It's not completely up to date. As I said, we're getting information in weekly, but if anyone is curious, if we've talked to anyone in your region at the end of the meeting, I can pull up that spreadsheet and we can look and we can make sure we'll communicate that. Not surprisingly, we didn't get a lot of, in our just initial observations of looking at the data, we don't have didn't see anything that we didn't expect to see. Most folks identified that their biggest problems were aging infrastructure. Finding well-trained personnel. About 50% of the folks that we've received surveys from were not familiar with the North Coast Resource Partnership or the North Coast IRWP, so there's been some outreach and education about our process through that. Of course, folks are interested in, most people are very, very interested in participating in the program and see some benefit to them. In general, what we're hearing from people is that their most burdensome regulatory challenges are the state sampling and testing procedures, particularly for drinking water standards. People are aware of existing technical services out there that we've been trying to connect people with through the Rural Community Assistance Corporation and Cal Rural Water. And that's one of the pieces of the technical assistance rolling it out on a number of levels, is connecting people with existing forms of technical assistance that are out there for them that may not be being fully utilized. And then again, we've heard that a lot of the technical assistance needs from people are system infrastructure maintenance and repair, how do I write a competitive grant? How do I find funding? What funding is there? And system mapping. So kind of what we expected, but it's reassuring to hear that what we thought we might hear is what we're getting. So like I said, we're just getting this data in. We're starting to analyze that more. And then the training needs of system compliance and operator testing, budgeting, rate setting, and again, with the grants. So as we move into this next phase of really rolling out our technical assistance, part of the project is people have suggested a number of projects that they have. Is we need to develop a process by which we'll prioritize the projects to really see some robust technical assistance. We have a significant amount of money to provide what maybe preliminary engineer plans, maybe a feasibility study, maybe some of their environmental documentation, and how do we, when we know there's such a tremendous need out there, how do we prioritize those projects? And that's why I'm here talking to you today. Is there's some options that we see, and one is maybe forming an ad hoc committee to assist the County of Humboldt as a regional administrator to develop an approach for implementing our technical assistance program. Having the sub-regional groups, so we've got kind of divided the region into 3 sub-regions, having these existing sub-regional groups prioritize how the prioritization process and the technical assistance. And then the staff recommendation is to have representatives from the sub-regions work with staff and ad hoc committee. Mainly, we just want to make sure that whatever decisions are getting made under this program are in conjunction with what the North Coast Resource Partnership is doing, and that we're heading in that direction. Not wanting to reinvent the wheel, as Wayne just discussed. We've got a pretty robust evaluation process, and wanting to have everyone on board. And so that's what I'm bringing to you today. I'm not exactly sure, since we just have a quorum, what happens as a result of this, but I'm happy to talk about our next steps as well. I don't know what to do next.
Well, I'd be interested in hearing what panel members have to say in this matter. My personal thought is, if this could remain at the technical level, would this be a ruling that we could make, that the technical committee working with our principals in Humboldt County make this decision, or do we as a policy review panel need to have a formal vote on saying that the technical group will take it forward? I'd just be interested in any thoughts people have. Marcia?
Well, setting up a criteria for prioritization, that's got to be the policy review panel,
Right.
but we can make recommendations from the technical review. The actual, I was very interested in your thing about whether they need to have an organization locally and how to set that up so that that dialogue and the sharing of resources and all the things that the integration occurs. And that's the actual integration, is having those kinds of associations where those trainings, after you've done the initial, that they can be perpetuated, where that you have an infrastructure of ideology or whatever, of education, so that it's shared, and technology is shared easily, and that resources can perhaps be shared as well. I know that's a humongous need in Siskiyou County, is to have that association established, and would perhaps be part of our planning effort as well, on a larger scale in the cities and the county as well. That piece needs to be put in place, and how we help that happen, at least in our area where everything's kind of disassociated.
But you would believe that the prioritization activity needs to come back as a formal recommendation to the review panel?
Yes.
Okay, that seems very reasonable. Any other thoughts from members of the panel or the technical group?
Well, as you said, I mean, I can see a role for the TRPC can have in this a bit, but I think any policy decision needs to come, put to you guys, and you guys have to make the decision on how best to proceed.
Anybody who knows me knows what I'm up to. I'm trying to finagle my way into getting action to proceed as quickly as possible so that we can get work done. But on the other hand, I recognize that we are probably going to have to wait until Weaverville to make the actual vote. In the meantime, is there any other advice that you would give to Jen?
Turn your head.
Sorry. Well, the vice chair just has to whack me. There you go. That's better.
Can't the chair just give direction to the technical review policy and then we can move forward? So, or you can form it ad hoc, you can do it.
I would,
We don't need a forum.
no, we don't need that, and since we have a technical committee in place, Mr. Co-Chair of the technical committee, I would so name you as the ad hoc committee in this matter so that you can proceed working with Humboldt County. In the meantime, recommendations will come back to us in 3 months' time. Is that clear to one and all and agreeable? Grace?
I'm interested in the surveys and what we can do to help you get more of the surveys turned into you.
Okay, that's really helpful. And so what we're looking at doing right now, so a part of our data analysis is looking at who we've gotten responses from to date, and then looking at who we haven't received responses from, and trying to do some kind of broad brush prioritization of those remaining, say, 200 or so that we haven't. One of the things that's been really interesting that I've heard from some of the folks that have been making these phone calls is that there's some really valuable anecdotal information that, while on paper maybe the trailer park doesn't sound like it's serving a larger community, but they actually happen to have a community store that's the closest store for anyone around town. It's really this community hub. So, it turns out that it's maybe a little more valuable than we think. So we're going to look and see who we've gotten responses from, really make a concerted effort to get back in touch with all the other folks that we haven't, and even looking at that sort of sub-list and reprioritizing that of who we, what we know about those communities. So that would be really helpful on a local level. If we can run those lists by you, like, what do you know about these? Do you know that they have a failing infrastructure? Do you know who maybe we don't have the right person to contact? And I'd be happy to send you some, by county lists of who we know we've gotten a hold of, who else we have. I mean, one of the things that's on the list, when there's rest stops on the list, there's U.S. Forest Service campgrounds. So, some of those that, if anybody that would have any other information other than just the community service district, or if you have information there to help us get in touch. I mean, the most important thing in terms of what we're looking to get is, and I'm sure as you are too, is really making sure that people with the most need receive this technical assistance, and making sure that just because we didn't get a response from someone doesn't mean that they don't have a need. In fact, it may be the case that by virtue of not responding means that there's even a bigger need there because they don't even have time to respond to a survey.
Or they don't have a
computer.
Please.
I'm sorry.
No, please go
How
ahead.
did you, for instance, I'm trying to think who in Etna would have received a survey. I didn't, and I don't know, how would you do it to a city?
I have to look at, John Miller, one of the county staff, has been compiling lists based on, any system that's right. So it probably was your public works guy, I forget his name that we were meeting with the other day. It might be who's the contact. And again, those are those kind of things. And one thing that's been great about the folks that have been making the phone calls, sometimes they've done a little sleuthing to find out, oh, I think the name we have maybe isn't actually the right person, and has updated our own contact list. But even those kind of have dead ends sometimes. So any of that kind of help, especially in these communities, would be really helpful.
If you send us a list of the people that you have in your current list, and if you could send us a survey so that
absolutely
we could get them to the right people and make sure that at least you get the right information, because sometimes they look at something and think, oh yeah, another document, and throw it away.
Right.
So if you could do that, and then we could, as a board of supervisors, we could take our areas and make sure that our areas are completing the surveys.
You have Wairika, I have 3,000 square miles.
I'll help you. Yeah. But I'll help you,
That
you
would be
know
really
that.
helpful. And making sure that the right person is filling out the survey as
Right,
well. And we've had
right.
instances where you may be talking to the receptionist who may not fully understand system needs, or maybe you're talking to the operator who may not fully understand what the board might need in terms of, I mean,
Right.
that's all technical assistance and that's all training, you know, we're looking at the full gamut from the system needs to board needs.
Right. And I did go to one of the training that was in Eureka, and it was really very good, and it was interesting to see who was there and what their needs were, and the communication between the people that were there, and that's key right there, to have everybody start talking to each other and exchange problems as well as fixes for problems. So.
And so Janet, you have some sense now as to how you can fulfill that
Sure,
with,
yeah.
and also with our other counties and tribes, just to do sort of a QA/QC. So
Yeah, I think if I'm hearing what you guys are asking, what I'm planning to do is go through our list and send the PRP members and TPRC members, just to capture the whole county of, this is who we have on our list for your county, with it either color-coded or somehow this is who we've received a response from, here's who we haven't, making sure, one, it's a complete list, and two, if there's any way you can help us reach those people and get the survey. I'll also make sure to provide a copy of the survey for and broken out by tribal
right,
jurisdictions.
and
policies.
Chris,
Yeah,
this
thanks.
is something possibly that you might.
And then with that communication with the tribal providers come to you then, Chris?
That would be good.
Okay,
Yeah.
thanks. Sorry about that.
And if you could go back to your recommendation page. Representatives from each of the subregions working with staff, which would be yourself and your colleagues, and the ad hoc committee just appointed, I would ask that you come back to the PRP with an approach for technical assistance implementation. Is that agreeable and makes sense? And the prioritization as well. So,
Thank you.
there we go.
Thank you
you all
very
very much. That brings us to updates. And updates are going to be brief updates to advance our cause. And Catherine, you have the first two updates.
Okay, this is communication by the PRP and TPRC chairs. There were two response letters regarding the Proposition 84 Round 2 project proposal review process. One to Supervisor Carrillo regarding the Sodium Resource Conservation District Austin Creek project, and one to Chairman Thomas O'Rourke of the Yurok Tribe regarding their project, fisheries program project to restore the lower Klamath River habitat. The executive committee also provided a letter of support to the State Water Resources Control Board regarding the Proposition 50 Round 1 contract amendment. And then the executive committee also met April 12th to plan for this meeting, and also at that meeting they disbanded the tribal coordinator ad hoc committee. Let's see, there was also a number of PRP directions during the last meeting of this group, and then staff did perform various activities. And so staff was directed to do brief with the TPRC to capture the improvements and that Wayne discussed. Staff was directed to send notification to TPRC and PRP members to join the planning ad hoc committee. Staff is still working with the graphic designer to finalize the logo, but we're getting closer every day. And then staff also submitted a Prop 84 Round 2 implementation grant on behalf of 13 projects for nearly $5.4 million.
That is a major accomplishment by staff and by our panel and by our technical committee, and even although it's right down at the end of this PRP direction and staff action, thank you all very much for that. That's a big deal, and it was well done by us, so thank you. Any questions that any members have on any of the items that have been up on the screen there that they would like to reference? I'm seeing no one. Any members of the public have anything that they would like to say at this time? I see no one rise. That would mean that we're now going to talk about the DWR Summit and Conference. And it says Jake McKenzie and Grant Davis, who wasn't here. Tim Anderson was there for a good part of the conference. I was there for the summit. I was there for the summit and part of the conference. I will make my report brief. We had high-level officials from the state of California address us at the Water Summit. And we were told of the importance of water. We were told of the importance of the RWM process and its history. And we were all happy to hear these reports. And we adjourned and came back the next day for the IWRM conference. And there were a number of panels at that conference. Leif Hillman was on one of the panels, which was reporting from different geographic areas how the IRWM process was working in terms of involving different communities and the like. They were asked as panelists, what could the state of California do to improve the IRWM process? And Leif Hillman's unequivocal answer was that they could follow the lead of the North Coast IRWMP, which of course pleased the chair mightily. He also made Mr. Davis very nervous when he suggested that maybe it wasn't a good way to do outreach communication to send a form letter to over 100 tribal council chiefs throughout the state of California and expect an enthusiastic response. But I assuaged Mr. Davis's nervousness and told him that he was right on track, at least as far as I was concerned, to make such a remark at a public conference. But we did note these remarks. We note that just in general, the way that we have conducted our business and submitted our proposals and priorities is well regarded in the state, and we are on track. Anything to add, Tim?
No, you nailed it. Very good, Mr. Chair.
So it was, it was a happy time. And we're back here and we're continuing to do our work. So that's my report on that. Regional Administrator Jen Kuzmar, we might as well start calling you by your right name.
Briefly wanted to provide an update on the Prop 50 Round 1 implementation, our first grant that's about 6 years old now, $25 million grant. The original grant term ended March 31st of this year. Since our last meeting, before our last meeting, we've been working with State Water Board staff to amend that agreement for an extension for a handful of projects that needed a little bit more time to get some construction completed. Most of the reason why they needed a little bit more time is we had a project in Humboldt County that was unable to implement their project as originally planned, and so their funds from the Ork Community Service District, those funds were reallocated using the PRP-approved reallocation process to other projects within the county of Humboldt. By the time that process took place, we were in October, November, not exactly prime construction time, and so in order for them to really utilize that funding, we needed a little bit more time. During that time, we've been working with all the remaining projects. There's about 6 or 7 projects that are included in our extension. All the other projects we've been working to close out, get final reports, final match documentation in, all the final budgets, doing all of that. So we have just, Supervisor Sundberg on behalf of the County of Humboldt just signed our formal amendment extending the grant agreement. We got a time extension and a deviation request that bought us the time to actually get the grant agreement done, so we're officially extended through March 2014. There will be no extensions beyond that date. All the projects are aware of that, and actually we've got them staged to where they'll be completing throughout this next year. Some are all but finished, need to just wrap up some final project reporting. Some need about as much time as we can get done. So, that we look forward to reporting all of the outcomes of that in the coming months, and particularly at the Northwest Conference. We are looking with the Prop 50 Round 2. Just briefly, we're looking to do a couple minor amendments to working together. Big news is we have a Proposition 84 Round 1 implementation grant agreement signed and ready to go.
Yay!
Yay! It's long awaited. Marty and I have been working really hard on that. Next week, our staff starts rolling out orientations, reorientations in some cases with each of the 18 projects included in that grant agreement to just get everyone on the right foot. We've learned a lot of lessons since the first round or Prop 50 and trying to just set everyone, the projects ourselves, and stay up for successful implementation. And we are very excited to see that moving forward. So some projects may even break ground very soon.
Thank you, Margie, by the way.
Oh, it's my job, but you're welcome.
No. Thank you.
Margie really did a lot of great work on our behalf on that. And then regarding the CAS gym, the County of Humboldt is working
You
on
might want to tell people what CASGIM stands for.
the California State Groundwater Elevation Monitoring Program. Is that correct? I know the gym part, is a requirement by DWR. The County of Humboldt is working with Carroll Reach and Humboldt Bay Municipal Water District and a number of partners to determine the best solution, one both for the County of Humboldt to come into compliance and looking at other folks, other areas in the region that need to be in compliance with this. Siskiyou County and Sonoma County both have current CASGIM compliant plans, and so we are working with them to look at how you guys got through the hoop and how we can get through the hoop and help everyone else get there by the time we get to the round 3 application. Hank Seaman, my supervisor, one of the TPRC members, has a geologist on staff who's kind of taken the lead on this and is who's gathering data now, communicating with folks at PWR. I actually was talking with Eric Ekdahl. He said the State Water Board's got a lot of information that we may find really useful region-wide. So it's something that we're actively really working on to tie that all up very quickly. Is there anything else specifically you guys want to It is an eligibility requirement for the grant funding. So as a regional administrator, County of Humboldt, it's very important that we come into compliance, and it's also important that every groundwater basin that may have a project submittal by the time we get to round 3 be in compliance, or it could be considered ineligible, is what we understand from the Department of Water Resources. So it's a pretty big deal. It's also an unfunded mandate, so not something people are usually thrilled to have put on their plate, but I think we're going to be able to find some. There's a lot of folks already doing a lot of this work out there that I think we're going to be able to find something that will be, I don't know if easy is the right word, but that will work well for everyone. I think we'll be able to try and help make that happen. We're provide what guidance we can throughout.
Thank you, and thank you for that report. Any questions of Jen on specific items that have been brought up? Any public comments on these matters? Seeing none, it just remains for me to thank Jen, who is making this all happen with the Humboldt County staff, who are, as always, doing superb work. And thank you for signing documents, Ryan.
Delivered.
Really? Well done. Anyway, we continue, and we continue to be successful. Thank you. Paul Kelly of Paul Kelly Consulting, talk about outreach efforts. Paul?
All right, thank you, Mr. Chair, and I'll just keep it fairly brief. I think most of you have seen that I do this little report thing that's in the back, so you can pick it up and get a little more information about most of my activities. As mentioned, I do the outreach and meetings and visiting the county boards of supervisors. In the last quarter, I was able to visit Trinity Board of Supervisors, give them an update on our integrated regional water management plan, the North Coast Resource Partnership. So I said that a bunch of times just to kind of use up all my air. But I think it was a good report, and it's very valuable. And just as a next step item to mention, I'll be reaching out to you to come back to some of the counties that I've already done, and because most of the ones that I've done prior to Trinity were before we actually made the recent allocation of funding. Also, doing a few other meetings with folks while I'm doing some of my other travels as well, and helping with some of the groups that may be looking at the next round of funding for application. And this just describes real quick a little bit about most of what my presentations are. And so I think that's about it for now, Mr. Chairman. Obviously,
understanding that the administrative draft, the one that's ready for public review, will go out in June. Of course, some of the feedback we receive from these regional meetings won't appear in that administrative draft. And I just want to point that out. It's not like, from my understanding, it's not the intent for this to be a waste of time. The intent is that your comments are going to be incorporated into the document. They just might not make that June deadline.
Right, and that's something they stressed. Don't panic if you don't see your comments in that June version, but they are forthcoming. They were really wanted folks, because there's panic that can easily set in.
Now in Wairika and Supervisors Armstrong and Bennett can correct me, but some of the things that we were brought up at our meeting were concern about in-stream flows from watersheds. Some headwaters are fed from lakes, some rely on snowfall, yet we have similar issues. How do changes in forestry practices, how do they affect the flows? What's happening? What are the effects of illegal water diversions? Some think that that lawful irrigators are diverting more than they should, but the biggest concern is marijuana, pot. I gotta just say that, I don't want to, because they remove water and they also contaminate the water supplies. Other things brought up were in trying to maintain a sustainable landscape. Sometimes the values seem like right now they're out of balance, and it would, from your perspective, anybody's, perspectives differ, but it's the feeling that those that relate to economic, social, and environmental concerns, that the balance is more towards environmental at the risk of social and economic concerns in the region. There's also concern about regulation and how it's interfering with the freedom of individuals. There's also still a lot of misunderstanding or lack of information about IRWM process. And can the IRWM process stop CDPI? Can it stop CDPI diversions? CV, Central Valley Project, what's the rest of it? But it's a Central Valley Project diversion from Trinity to Shasta Lake is what I'm referring to. I get my acronyms mixed up. I work in a program of acronyms. Anyway, does an IRWM have that kind of power? These are some of the things that people want to know the answer to. It's my understanding, no. IRWM cannot.
Not a regulatory body.
Not a regulatory agency, and cannot supersede, undermine anyone else's authority. And then another thing is how much power. You guys work through, the North Coast works through a memorandum of mutual understanding, a non-binding agreement. So how much power do regions really have under that? It's got to be voluntary and a commitment on your part, I think. But anyway, that's my comment, not what that was made. And then one of the things was also brought up about KBRA. The description in the regional report, because they made a comment on the regional report, was that it ought to be overhauled to capture all the points of view, that what appeared in this initial draft was slanted towards, one side at the expense of another. There's concern about where this regional approach, where's this agenda coming from? what is the agenda purpose? And how does it affect pre-19? I missed Dave Webb's remark about the pre-1914 water rights, so I'm not really sure. Can you help me with that?
Whether the Irwin is a vehicle in order to, that's being used in order to regionalize decision-making and governance to disenfranchise people from vested pre-1914 water use rights and local government control over certain aspects of water.
Thank you. You did a much better job of articulating that than I did. I missed that. I was note taker, lunch go-getter, and a number of other things, so, you know, some of that I missed. But did you want to say any more about how you were in?
I was in Santa Rosa, and I was unable to stay for the whole meeting. But I did read through the draft report, and I think to me it looked like it was basically complete and had information that was current as of the last report and hadn't changed much at this point. But there were a few details I would like to send written comments on.
Okay. And I don't know if they provided you with a conduit?
Yes.
Okay, good, because I can take comments and forward them, but it's, you know, it's more appropriate to send them to the contacts of the peer. Oh, look at you, the peer on the website. Good job. Anyway, there were a couple of other presentations, one of them being on the strategic plan, and this one is relevant to this group because the strategic plan is, this is the whole name for this, once again, lots of strategic plans. The whole name for this is Strategic Plan for the Future of Integrated Regional Water Management. And so, but that's one of the things that another branch of Sacramento has been working on. We're having, the other plan is a workshop or a regional forum relating to IRWM, and the one that's coming up will be held in Reading on May 15th. But that doesn't mean that that's all of them. I guess, see, Reading on May 15th, Sacramento on May 16th. And if you just happen to be in Clovis, Temecula, or Burbank, there's an opportunity there. I have a few flyers, so if you're interested, hang on to one, and if you're not. And then regarding that, there's a draft document, and there's a flyer here that kind of gives you some information on what the department is looking for in trying to develop the future of IRWM. Because I think that one of the things all of us, you know, we know that what's the funding source? How are we going to support this? You know, and those are the types of things that we hope to get in this policy document so that we know that this is going to be sustainable. It's intended to be a 20-year lifespan, but yet our grant programs don't have that 20-year term. So I don't know if it's better to put these on the side or pass them around.
Yeah, pass it around.
Pass them around.
And once again, if you're interested, go ahead and take a look. Now there was, one of the other things that came up during the talk was a presentation at lunchtime by someone from the governor's office, Office of Planning and Research, that gave a talk on a plan that's developing in Sacramento, a 50-year environmental policy plan. And I have to admit and say very straightly, that's the first I heard of it. I had no idea she was speaking. Don't have any more information on it. But I did send out some emails yesterday briefly when I was in the office to try to get a little more information so that I could, if someone has some questions like, hey, where'd that come from? That's totally out of left field. And is it redundant of everything else we're doing at the same time? You know, water planning, and so many other things. And so I'm trying to get a little clarification on that. I don't really know much. Only other thing I was talking about and we confirmed that there's at least a couple weeks more to make comments on the regional report, and everybody should take a look at it. I called you when I was trying to help Mark write the section on Modoc County and junipers, and I was looking for information, so, you know, I think that, take a look at what's been said about your region. I was trying to write about some of the restoration, helping Mark, I'm not doing it. I was helping Mark writing about some of the restoration projects, and the sources I use, I'm not absolutely sure that what I have is what should be written, because I found out later, this is planned, it has been implemented, and here I've written it as if it's already done. So really need to look at that, really need to look at that. And I think that if you go to the website, the contacts are there, and you can send your comments to me, I'll forward them, or you can use the web. Like, I'll take the comments from the meeting I attended, the ones I have got from the supervisors and a couple other folks, and forward them in addition to the notes that I took during the meeting. And hopefully they'll be, when I have time to sit down, they'll be a lot clearer whenever I come up. So, does anyone have any questions?
I'd just like to say I thought it was a great effort on DWR's part to have satellite locations. And, you know, technology is still a little new, but I think it worked about as well as you could hope for, to have people in multiple rooms with a speakerphone. If everyone had a speakerphone, then you were all looking at the same presentation. And I think that was really good feedback that you guys heard at DWR and then implemented through that. So
I'm glad it worked. That was the first time that I had an opportunity. And it seemed remarkable because there wasn't one side that went down. There were a couple of glitches, but there wasn't like someone that was totally isolated just winging it on their own. And that was an accomplishment. I can't take credit for it, but I got to use it. So if there's no other questions.
We will be represented at the May 15th.
Good, good, I heard that.
And we will be considering, you know, clearly this draft strategic plan, the development approach, and we'll have a chance as a policy review panel to review recommendations by the person who will be attending the meeting, one Karen Gaffney. And others are, of course, invited
Are
to.
you going to Sacramento or?
I'm going to go to Red Bluff.
Well, it's now ready.
Ready.
Oh, Reading, we'll go to Red Bluff.
Right.
I'm out of state, otherwise I would
Did you, I sent out an email yesterday talking about what the vision for the meeting with, please, you know, bring a poster. These are the types of things you ought to bring along, you know, to help your, make your more effectively interacting with the other regions. I sent it to Catherine. Sorry, I'll forward it.
Any members of the public have any comment they would like to make?
I just make one real quick one. That Office of Planning and Research, the lady that was giving the presentation, she was not very receptive to our concerns. And one particular one, both Marcia and I made comments on. Right up there at the top, they had the Delta, you know, as their top priority, right in the middle of this chart. You know, over on one side was the point was to preserve the resources of California. Well, for those of us that are trained in ecology, preserve has a very different meaning than conserve, and it fit exactly what my perception. You people probably don't know this, but the Chief of Wildlife Management in Sacramento, Dr. Eric Loff, did both his master's and his PhD with me. Started on Trinity Lake, effect on deer migration patterns, and then a grazing study on Sonora Pass on deer-cattle interactions. And through Eric, I'm getting the perception very clearly that the Humane Society of the United States is now the final decider on hunting programs. And what Eric told me in an email is that there are 1 million Humane Society members in California and only 200,000 people anymore that will buy a hunting license in California. So they are overwhelmed by that group of our California membership, our California people. And so my latest email from Eric was, the old North American model of managing fish and game is gone. That is hunting, and you probably all see this in the name of Fish and Game now, it's California Fish and Wildlife. They are not going toward producing more deer anymore, more ducks, more pheasants for hunters. That is gone. And so we're in an era now where things are going toward preservation.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Appreciate
yeah,
your
yeah,
comment.
yeah.
No other business on that item. We now come to public comment yet again. If anybody have, members of the public have any final comment they'd like to make on this meeting and its contents, now is your time. Seeing no one rise,